Remember to speak into the thing.
If those joining us, please take a seat. I am going to convene this meeting of the Mattis Aquatic Center Recreation District Budget Committee at
6:04.
6:04 on Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. So I lost my place. Looking for attendance. Board Chair Seabold is present. Vice Chair Lewis is absent. Secretary Treasurer McCloskey present. Board Member Dominguez.
Present.
Board Member Maynard.
Present.
Budget Committee Member Gassner. Present. Budget Committee Member Irving. Present. Budget Committee Member Kish.
Here.
Budget Committee Member McNamee. Present. Budget Committee Member Reed.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Okay, first up on our agenda is election of Budget Committee officers. Are there any nominations for the position of chair? Can I nominate Melissa? Okay, we've got a nomination for Melissa Irving from Brandy McNamee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Melissa. I will now hand the meeting over to you.
And if you could please speak into, our microphones are terrible, so online we want them to be able to hear.
All right, so next up, we need to elect a vice chair. Do I have any nominations for vice chair?
I think Alexa would do a great job.
I have a motion for Alexa. Do I have a second? Second by committee member Kish. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, there we go. Thank you, Alexa.
I'm so sorry that I was muted during all of that introduction about the budget committee, but we're going to go right into what the budget message is. So we pick a word every year to try and encapsulate what our budget is about. This year, the word is resilience. The proposed budget is rooted in our 10-year master plan that was adopted in 2023 and focuses on the following 4 items: retention of critical staff positions, coming into compliance with new Oregon Health Authority state rules that went into effect on April 1st of this year, maintaining high quality and consistent aquatics programs, and preserving as much maintenance investment as feasible within the budget. Okay, so the way that our budget is organized is based on state law. State law has a 100 and something page manual for local budgets that we're required to follow. We do a fund-based budget approach. We have 3 funds. Our general fund is where all of our operational dollars are located. It also includes short-term debt that we need to repay, and that's where all of our staffing positions are included. We have a debt services fund, which is where the money comes in from levying bond property taxes and then pays off the bond. We do still need this fund this year because we had a pretty significant property tax refund that occurred last summer, and then we just had another 1.5% refund with another utility that hit us a few weeks ago that we found out about. So we will be levying some dollars in that bond fund in this proposed budget. And then finally, we have our maintenance reserve fund. The goal of this fund is to save money for future capital needs. So there are 3 funds included for the Mac Recreation District. Now we're going to get into the spreadsheets. And for those of you that are in the audience, this is printed over on the table. For those of you online, it's available on our website. And for those of you in front of me, you have it both in your budget books. It's the final column that says did not pass, or you have it in a handout that's printed for you as it shows on here. Any questions so far before I take us into the spreadsheets?
Just one, the taxes, those were, just want to make sure that everyone hears that there was a tax refund. It wasn't for the MAC, that was.
Correct. Yeah, I can talk about the tax refund real quick. So back in July, a utility rolls tax refund was identified. A utility had misapportioned their value within Jefferson County. And as a result, they received a $1.8 million refund in property taxes. That $1.8 million was divvied up between all the taxing districts. And so we had to pay that money back, essentially. As a result, the funds that we levied to pay off our bond this year were insufficient. We didn't collect enough to pay off our bond. So our general fund had to make a loan to the debt services fund to make the final bond payment on May 31st. There are provisions with the state that if that happens, you can levy money on your bond to pay that loan back. And so that's what you're going to see in the budget this year. The one that we just found out about with another utility is about a $20,000 hit to our property tax revenues. Last year's was about, I want to say 75,000, but then it was a double hit because we had also budgeted on those inflated property tax numbers. So it was a $150,000 reduction in our general property taxes, which is why we had to cut services this last year. And again, why we're in the position that we're in this year with this budget. Does that help?
Yes, thank
Okay.
But people in the waiting room.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So we are on page 18 of your budget binder. And we're just going to go through each of the different line items in the budget. So the proposed budget includes total beginning fund balance. As you'll note, it's a very low beginning fund balance because we don't have any money. And for our county commissioner in the audience, thank you. We received our tax anticipation loan that we always get a month early so that we would have funds to get us through the remainder of the fiscal year and make the loan to the debt services fund. So we're projecting to start the year with $693. That means that we have $693 sitting in our bank account to get us through till November when property tax revenues come in. But because we have a tax anticipation loan from the county, we actually have $210,693 that will get us through until November. Because property taxes have been a bit of a hot mess the last couple years with those tax roll adjustments, I went back 2 years to the last normal actual, which was 22-23, and I increased it by 3% for each year since. And that's how I came up with our property tax revenues that are proposed for the fiscal year. And then the prior year permanent and local option levy taxes are estimates based on what we typically bring in. We've got about $35,000 in receivables for those taxes. So we know that there's taxes that are owed out there and about that much to the district. And they'll come in as properties are sold or as their taxes are paid. Yes,
You get the letter, from the assessor.
I did.
Usually we have that in our budget.
Yeah, I didn't use it because I did not use it. I'm happy.
The assessor.
I think it was 400 and something thousand for the permanent. I can't remember off the top of my head. I can look it up when you guys are deliberating.
Back utility bill corrections for the last 2 years. That is massive. Utility bill corrections, but the batteries and Courtney went back 3 years. That was volatile. And say, okay, let's say that it's gonna stay like this, increase of 3% of the math to be super.
But we've had assessed out, we've had developments that have come on.
We also need that money the herd gets.
Heard consent.
Yeah.
So even though like there's been development in Madras, their herd collects 100%, the pool's not gaining anything. You're going back 3 years, so it is a concern.
On revenues, I was pretty conservative. Just because I want to be as conservative as possible on revenues. And then I probably overestimated on expenses because then at the end of the year, hopefully we have more savings.
So does the 277 for the current year? They're in phase 11 of this.
Mhm. To the projected year end.
Yeah, so.
That is what I project. So that projection was created before the most recent refund was identified. So I was pretty conservative. I think we're going to be probably close to 275, even with that most recent refund that was announced. But it could come in lower than that.
I know as a result of the first major roll correction, there was some money that was returned to the districts. Is that reflected in, where is that reflected in the budget?
That is reflected in prior year permanent rate and prior year local option levy
Okay,
and prior year on the bond as well for taxes. So it's within that. No, I'm sorry. It's in the I'm sorry. It's in the current permanent rate for each of those, the 277 and the 440.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure, I can
And
try.
I had a pretty long conversation with our tax collector about whether or not it was collections that were low or if, and he was saying that the county was also having these conversations. And it's just those tax refunds really hit all of the taxing districts, impacted our revenues. I can ask everyone on Zoom to please mute. That would be great. Thank you. Questions on sorry, I'm going to see if I can. Thank you. The person that is usually doing this had a death in the family and isn't here tonight, so it's a lot. Thank you for your patience with me. Any more questions on property taxes before we move to the next?
Is everybody clear on the fact that we get to next year? We get to ask for that $60,000. Even though our
Dates.
yes, because it was a Department of Revenue utility roll corrections these last 2 years that we weren't able to get our full levied amount. So then we get to extend and get that 60,000 back next year.
Or is it 40,000?
40.
Oh, I
It's
thought it was 20 from this year and the 40 from last year.
No, we're just gonna levy the 40. It's because we're levying for the loan amount that the general fund made to the debt service fund. And the state Department of Revenue says there are provisions for paying back loans that you have to take for that interfund loan, as long as they're paid back within one fiscal year. So programs and services revenue, again, you'll see some significantly reduced numbers on memberships, just because of the limited hours that the MAC will have moving forward for the fiscal year. So that's significantly reduced. Our facility revenues are flat from what we have now. That is because we have partnership agreements with the school district, and with a couple other partners who rent our facility for parties and swim lessons and swim team practices and those types of things. And so we don't anticipate that changing next year from what we've done this year, because we'll be open for those services, just like we were in the prior year. And then user fees and registration is significantly reduced because this budget does not include land-based programs. It's only aquatics programs. And the user fees and registrations include group swim lessons, junior swim team, private swim lessons, and family drop-in swims for family swim and splashdowns and lap swimming and all that kind of stuff, fitness classes, drop-ins, all those things. So the total revenues for programs and services is at $175,000. Questions about that revenue? The next section of grants, donations, and miscellaneous. Last year, you'll recall that we had to plug in a pretty significant grant number to balance the budget. The board was not comfortable doing that. And so we are still pursuing grants heavily. I spend probably 4 to 10 hours a week looking for grants, particularly for capital and maintenance, which is our biggest need. And having said that, we have not budgeted any money in grants as revenue because we wanted to be as conservative as possible. And I can bring a budget adjustment to the board throughout the year to adjust for that if we do receive any grants. Donations and fundraising, that we expect to remain. We've actually brought in a lot of donations the last couple of weeks since the election happened. And so I anticipate that folks that are committed to keeping the aquatics programs going will be interested in providing donations, as well as potentially for capital or maintenance needs. We were very conservative on interest, just because we're going to have less cash sitting in the local government investment pool. So I lowered that quite a bit from what we did this year. And then miscellaneous revenue is random things like selling assets, like if we have any sort of claim with insurance, which we tend to have small ones once in a while. We've had big ones the last couple of years, just random things. And so I plugged in $10,000 there. Any questions on grants, donations, miscellaneous revenues?
Courtney, real quick, could you
Yeah.
just, as the grants, we have out there, you have a total on that applications right now?
Yeah, I can pull that up. Ooh, let's see.
I mean, I found the.
Because it's in our board
It doesn't
packet.
have the estimated total
Let's see.
for apps that are in process.
So right now we have 49,000 that have been applied for that we have not heard back on. We have a bunch that we've identified to apply for in the fall, in particular for the locker room project. And then we've got a number that were not successful this year, but those are the ones that.
There's about 49 right now, currently applied, still out there.
Yep.
now.
Okay, and then finally for transfers from other funds. So you'll see that we always give ourselves budget authority to transfer the full amount that's in our maintenance reserve fund to the general fund in case we need to use it. The goal is to not use it, but that $11,000 that's sitting in the maintenance reserve fund, this gives us budget authority to transfer that if necessary. And then the transfer from the debt service fund is to repay the loan that the general fund made to the debt services fund and to transfer any interest and prior year taxes from the debt service fund to the general fund. Because the bond is paid off, any prior year taxes and interest can be transferred to the general fund. And so that gives us a total budget of $1,010,953. And those are the revenues for the general fund, our operating fund. Any questions about any of those?
Looks like I'm always running.
Thank you. I appreciate you keep,
If I just pop over and do it myself or.
Either way.
wherever I find.
either way it's fine. It works. All right. Oh.
Let me just ask a
Yep.
quick question. As far as grants, do you see them still being out there, or are they starting to dry up?
I would say for ongoing operations, there's not a lot. We're seeing a lot of projects focused on underrepresented, equitable, health-related, all those words, from the state and from other nonprofits within our region. So I think we have the potential to apply for some of those once we know how we're operating next year. We kind of put a pause the last couple of weeks until we know if we're open or, what the plan is from the board. But there's a lot of swim lesson, water safety, those types of grants out there. They're not huge. They're 5,000 or 6, they're low level. I'm starting to see more focused on capital for rural areas and construction, but a lot of it is for new construction and not for maintenance and capital that exists. We were never receiving federal grants, so that's not an issue for us. So I would say I'm not seeing it go down yet. But what we're eligible to apply for is restricted with the way we've restricted our programs and services.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm sorry. This little bar of everybody is in my way. I can't see. All right, so this is on page 16 of your budget book, and it just shows you our historical revenues and resources for the years that local budget law requires us to show within the budget book. So the next section is on expenditures. So if you turn to page 19, this is the general fund summary. So there are certain things that are shown in the summary, and then there are detail sheets behind it. So we're going to go through the summary first, and then we'll go to the department detail sheets after that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So first, for personnel services, this is where all of our staff, our FTE, our benefits, workers' compensation, all of those costs are included. We're proposing a budget of $440,927 and 4.75 FTE. This is a reduction of almost 50% from our current budget in FTE, and it's a reduction of 27 people to 6 people. This is just a reflection of the dollars that we have available within the budget to do the work. There's no cost of living adjustment. There's no merit increases. There's no changes to anything. It's a straight across from current to propose with those reductions. Materials and services is flat. Most of that is because of ongoing increasing costs in our facilities budget, utilities, pool chemicals, all those things continue to rise. We did our best to cut where we could, and we'll go through those in detail by department in a moment. We do still have a domestic hot water heater that everyone's sick of me talking about that we need to replace. She's still humming along, but we reset her about 15 to 20 times a day. We've got to replace her next year. It just has to happen. And so that brings our total cost of rec services to $964,000. And then we do have 2 short-term borrowing items that we have to repay. We've got our energy trust loan. And then we also have our tax anticipation loan from the county. So both of those are included in that short-term borrowing. Because the loan from the county is within 1 year, it doesn't show up here. It shows up as a liability on our balance sheet. So you don't see the principal in this budget, you just see the interest that gets paid back. And then our total expenditures with that debt added to it is $1,009,931, leaving us $1,000 as our ending fund balance. And I will share with you that the board is going to make some decisions tonight in the business meeting that will impact that number. And I would remind the budget committee that the budget is a ceiling. And then staff and the board, through managing through the year and decisions daily and weekly and monthly, can come in far under that ceiling if necessary. So are there any questions on this summary sheet before we jump to the detail sheets for the departments? Yes.
I have a question. What did you say? Yeah. The boiler.
So the capital outlay 40 is, yeah, that's for the domestic water.
So didn't we talk about last year's budget?
Yes. And we did not,
That's right, is there, your end, so you're just pushing it here,
correct,
but the same amount.
correct, yes. We ended up having to pay about $15,000 in repairs to our pool boilers. And because of that, we didn't have the resources sufficient to do the $45,000 repair on the domestic water heater.
What's, sorry,
Mhm.
in the 23, you have a audit balance sheet adjustment of 11,097 right in the middle of the page.
Yes. So there was an adjustment to, oh gosh, I think it was related to something was moved from the balance sheet. I'm trying to think what it was. They took something off liabilities from the balance sheet and placed it onto the profit and loss. And Brandy, off the top of my, I can't think of what it was. And rather than try and just dump it in one of the departments, I just stuck it in as an adjustment so that it balances to the audit.
Just for this year.
Yeah, I think it was related to something that should have been put in repairs and maintenance and was put in capital, if I recall correctly.
Is there-
Correct. Exactly. To materials and supplies under the facilities budget. I'm pretty sure that that's what that is. Other questions on this one before we go to detail? Oh, just real quick, and I show this, I've been showing this slide to you guys for the last few years. As our capital expenses increase, our ending fund balance goes down, and it's because we only have so many resources. And this is we've been saying it for 5-6 years since I've been here, when I was the interim and then as the permanent. Unless we change our structural deficit in our budget, we are eventually not going to have any money to make repairs. And now we're in a position where we're choosing between maintaining the facility and paying people to have programs and services. And that's the position we're in. If we had a tree out there or some sort of fund somewhere that we could pull money from, it would help this, but we don't. It's a zero-sum game. And as we spend those dollars to fix things, we don't have that money helping carry us forward to the next fiscal year. All right, so now we are on page 20, which is the detail sheet for recreation programs. And as a reminder, recreation programs includes all of our recreation programs, aquatics. Historically, it included all of our sports and enrichment programs. The proposed budget only includes aquatics programming. And I got ahead of myself. We are proposing a reduction of 4.75 FTE from the prior year. All of those FTE are in programs that we won't be offering moving forward. And they're also seasonal lifeguards and swim instructors and positions that we will not have moving forward because of the reductions. So we're proposing 2.25 FTE in recreation programs. And then we did our best to make cuts under materials and services, but there are just some things that we have to have. We're required to do a certain amount of professional development, for example, with all of our lifeguards. 4 hours a month is the minimum. Lifeguards are required to wear certain uniforms. We have to have packs that have certain equipment in it. And so some of those expenses just are what they are. And so you can see we were able to cut it down by about 20,000 from the current year to next year. That's about as deep as we can go on this particular budget without compromising safety of both our staff and our patrons. Any questions on rec programs? So facilities this is the budget that quite frankly takes all of our money. So one of the things that, as you've heard me say, and many of you have heard me say it many times, happened this year is that the Oregon Health Authority adopted the Model Aquatic Health Code effective April 1st, 2025, and we have a year to come into compliance with it. And one of the things that it requires is that you have an asset, well, lots of plans. It requires lots of documented plans that we do not currently have. It requires asset management, which we do not currently have. And it requires a certain level of staffing, both for the facility and then also for lifeguarding and for other things. Those requirements related to staffing are 1 lifeguard to every 40 patron. And we are now required to have a lifeguard at the top of the slide and the bottom of the slide. So where we used to get away with having a swim instructor, deck attendant at the top of the slide, and then lifeguards around the rest of the facility, we're now using 2 staff who could have been looking at 80 people. We're now using them to watch the slide because of these laws. And so there are things that I would love to change that we don't have any control over and have been put into place because I presume something happened in some facility somewhere that made this happen. So as it relates to the aquatic facility itself, we're proposing in the budget hiring a full-time pool operator and maintenance coordinator. Right now we have 3 staff, 2 head lifeguards and myself who manage the facility. We also have contractors that we can call if we see things that look odd, or we hear noises that we shouldn't hear. That's the extent of the knowledge of the maintenance that we're essentially doing on this facility. And so the proposal has 1 full-time pool operator maintenance coordinator and a reduction of our custodial staff. Is the proposed budget. And so you'll see that the personnel services for this increases because of that full-time position. And then under expenses, we did again our best to try and reduce costs, but there are things that we're required to do for maintenance. So for example, all of our certified pool operators are required to have respirators. Those respirators require maintenance and regular cleaning and all these things. Because we handle chemicals, we're required to have certain PPE that have to be replaced regularly and some other things. Trainings that are required for our certified pool operators. We currently have 5 on staff. And then repairs and maintenance I've tried to preserve it as much as I can. So we've got 45,000 budgeted there. You can see that historically, some years we have more than others in terms of spending in that line item, but it gives us a space where we can do regular maintenance on a lot of our things. So for example, the ultraviolet treatment system on the 3 pools is about $6,000 for the lap pool. $4,600 for the lap pool, $3,200 for the leisure pool, and another $4,600 for the spa. And so in total, it's like $12,000 or $13,000. We can break that down into 3 separate projects and have it in repairs and maintenance rather than putting it in capital. Another example is it's $15,000 for our annual contract for our boiler maintenance. It's, I want to say, $9,000 for our annual maintenance on the HVAC system. Our Climatech system is about $7,000 a year. And so you can see all of these things add up as we're maintaining the facility. Some of those costs are in contractual services, some of those costs are in repairs and maintenance. We also have to replace the computer that all of our facilities programs are on. It's 12 years old and it no longer is going to be protected by Microsoft. And so that is going to be replaced within this budget as well. Are there any questions about this? Yeah.
I have a question. So you noted that the slide requires 2 FTEs, what, 200?
Two staff.
Remember how much the per pool, and like you said, the sauna is 600. Has the board ever considered even decommissioning components
Not
to
yet.
save money on? Like, yeah, if the sauna is gonna cost $6,000, you can't afford it, shut down the sauna, it's a lot easier. Those are things.
That's not something that staff has proposed to the board or they've discussed this time. One of the things that we talked with we have a contractor that works with us in the pump room. And we asked them if we just shut everything off, what would the cost be to bring it all back on if we reopened? And the answer is $1 to $2 million. So shutting anything down completely is way more expensive than reducing it to the lowest level of, temperature and all the things.
Like I've seen this often through.
So the spa can be drained. If we drain the lap pool and the leisure pool beyond a certain level, it's gonna impact the liner to the point where we would have to replace them. So it's very expensive to completely decommission any of them, but it's certainly a conversation that we could have.
It's basically. What's that?
Well, we used to drink from,
Yeah. Most it. They regularly. They go away. Hard cold fact. I was in water operations. Here for 11 years.
Ewan has pool.
They have lots of reservoirs. If you open the hatch on top of that, it's a big tool.
You might not want to jump in it, but
Yeah,
Courtney, can you talk about the difference between the OHA 1 to 40 ratio and American Red Cross's?
yeah, so the state requires that we have 1 to 40 lifeguards to patrons. American Red Cross, which is our certifying agency, recommends 1 to 25. And so as a staff team, we've identified best practices for our facility. So for example, if we have more than 20 little toddlers, maybe 4 toddlers to a parent sometimes in the leisure pool, then we go 1 to 20 or 1 to 25 because we want to have more eyes on that water. If we have a bunch of middle schoolers, we definitely want to be at like 1 to 30, 1 to 35 because they get crazy on the basketball hoops and then they also do some things in the leisure pool. So we kind of look at who's in the water. In the mornings we can get away with 1 lifeguard to 40 because patrons are exercising their and so what that means is we have 1 lifeguard that's actively scanning. We have 1 lifeguard in the lifeguard room who is ready to respond as the second responder if something happens and give breaks every 15 minutes. We have a deck supervisor who's also lifeguard certified, who is doing chemical checks and also going to the back and making sure chemicals are okay. We have someone at the front desk and we have typically a supervisor in the building as well, which is also now required as part of the new rules. And the board has heard me say this many times, and the budget committee probably too. When I came on, I said, we're not letting teenagers run this facility. We're always going to have an adult in the building. And now that's part of the law. So we've been doing it for about 5 years, and now we're legally required to do it as of April 1st.
one thing I might just add is what Randy was talking about, as far as the pools and everything, but one thing you probably could shut down is the slide.
We could, but it wouldn't save money because that water is all part of the leisure pool. So it's all together. Now we could shut down the slide and save money on those 2 staff.
That's what it's not.
Just like rope it off and not available?
Yeah. Of course, It's
And
not quite as much fun that way.
well, and that's part of the plan for next year, or for the school year, if that's the plan the board goes with when we reopen. Is that slide would only be in operation pretty infrequently because we won't have enough staff.
So, I mean,
Other questions on the facilities budget? All right, I'm gonna keep trucking along. The administration budget. So there's a reduction of 0.25 FTE. And you'll note that the proposed personnel services is higher than the current year. Part of that is that the board adopted a new wage scale based on feedback from this budget committee. They did a wage analysis and adopted a wage scale. And so that's in your budget in the supplemental budget section. The board will be having discussions about this as part of their conversation during the business meeting. And then you can see under materials and services, we did our best again to cut back where we could. We do have, we are locked into some increases for our audit and for technology services, and our liability insurance is predicted to go up about 17%. So you'll see that our biggest expense in this budget are the contractual services and the liability insurance. And then the other expenses that you see are related to our registration system. We expect those fees to go down as we are taking in less money through those systems. We also, have to replace at least one of the front desk computers. They're both 9 years old and will no longer be protected by Microsoft. And so I'm proposing we just replace one and get rid of the other one. So we'll only have one station at the front desk instead of two. Any questions about the administration budget?
What's in contractual services for 45,000?
So that's our audit, technology contract. And then we put I think 10 to 15,000 in there to help with exploring options for the future. So SDA, the Special Districts Association of Oregon, has contractors who come out and help you evaluate next steps. So that could include privatization. It could include working with the county or the city or some other organization on how to move forward since the measures did not pass.
Has the city or county object used the match on exploring like the reason I ask is in other mergers that they've done locally, like the city has pitched in funds to help.
We have not had that conversation yet. Other questions on this one?
Will the board's discussion involve, obviously it's awkward, but your position is paid fully, for 1.5 FTEs at a personal services of $187,000 is very high, and you're supervising significantly less people. The facility is going to be closed. Will there be a proportionate reduction in hours and or?
Yes. The board will make that decision.
Okay.
But yes, that has been proposed.
Okay.
Yeah, there will be cost savings in this budget. Yeah. Okay, so next we have our capital improvements list. Rather than give you two separate ones, we just gave you one, because whether the measure's passed or not, these are all the things that need to be done. And so what I'm showing on the screen is just the first of 2 pages. And we've budgeted 45,000 for that replacement of our domestic water heater. All of the other things you see in the proposed budget line will get moved to 26, 27 or further out. But this is our capital improvement plan. And so we wanted it to reflect all the things that need to be fixed, even if we can't fund it.
Question, you said earlier that treatment was paid out of the maintenance budget, but why do you have the system maintenance on here as capital?
So we have it here just so we remember that it's happening, but it's not part of the cost of this budget. It's not part of the capital improvement budget. So this spreadsheet serves as both our maintenance plan and our capital improvement plan. And so you're seeing it there as a reminder to us to make sure that it happens.
But it doesn't flow to the capital.
Yeah, it doesn't flow out of the capital. It doesn't tie back to that capital budget that's proposed. Because for example, the spa filter media that you see up there at the top for 5,000, that actually costs about 4,700. So it won't end up being capitalized, but this is just so we remember we need to do it this year. That comes out of repairs and maintenance.
So might I ask why 2027 and 28 looks like if the whole facility's gonna go down?
Because we just loaded it up. Those are all the things we expect to happen in those years. Part of it is the locker room improvement project is budgeted at 1.3 million over 2 years. So that's part of that. We also have a number of filter media replacements that are due in that year, as well as some other safety related items. Cooling and venting in our hallway where all of our electrical panels are is something that we've been told needs to happen. We don't have the funds to do that, so we put it into that 27-28. Part of it too is that if the measures had passed, we would have been able to leverage money to borrow non-bond financing to do all of those projects. And so that's part of why it was loaded into that year as well.
This is more of a long range plan. Yeah, that doesn't really tie to, well, you don't have the budget for it, so.
Yeah.
A wish list.
Yes, well, and I wouldn't say wish list. I would say that these are all things that are going to happen.
Right.
And every year we delay doing them, they cost more. The next slide is not in your budget, but it's one that you've seen before for me. And I always say that data tells a story, and this slide for me tells the story of this district better than any other slide I could show you. And what you can see is that in the first 3 years of operation, 2008-9 to 2010-11, and 2011-12 and 13, there were not funds to operate the facility. They were ending in negative fund balance. And so that first local option levy was passed, and that in that year they had an ending fund balance of $64,000. Then as you move forward, things happened with operations that masked the lack of funding. So when Kids Club had an IGA with the district, all of their revenues flowed through the district. And so when they had summer registrations happening in June, all of that cash looked like ending fund balance, but it's not because it belonged to that other organization. As you move forward, you see 2020-21, we had COVID money that we received that was then spent in the following year. All of these things masked this structural deficiency in the budget over the years. And, you know, now we're in a position of having to deal with that. If you look below, you can see that there have been a number of executive directors over the course of the 17 years of history. And when you see that kind of turnover in leadership, it's hard to get a foothold and make things happen consistently over time. And so I think all of that coupled together has created the situation that we find ourselves in as we go through this proposed budget. The other piece of the story is that revenues trend with total personnel. This slide shows you, it is there. The number of program FTE, which is the brown column, tracks with revenues increasing or decreasing. And that's because we are a service program driven industry. And so part of what I've been trying to do since I came on was shift all our FTE from admin and facilities to programming. But now you see in this proposed budget, we're moving back to a place where you have to have a certain backbone in admin and facilities to make it work. And that's why you're seeing that flip for this proposed budget. So in the budget, this is on page, it's behind this thing that I can't see, page 56 of your budget. The board adopted a organizational chart back at one of their work sessions this spring. And the proposed budget does include these positions. And one of the recommendations that I'm making to the board at our meeting this evening is that we do not fill 2 of the new positions. And that instead we retain existing staff who are doing this work and reallocate some time to make sure that we're covering all the things we're required to do. By doing that, we are saving about $68,000. So that $68,000 in unbudgeted savings will be added to that ending fund balance of $1,000. If the board approves that particular savings approach in the budget.
Which 2 businesses?
That is the aquatics operations supervisor. The executive director will absorb that function. And the pool operator maintenance coordinator, we're going to continue to do what we've been doing, but with a robust asset management system that will be implemented this summer. In your budget, you also have information that the board has been looking at since March about what happens if the measures do not pass. So on page 51, you can see the proposed Madras Aquatic Center hours that had been shared. I think we put that together in March. And it shows that the MAC will be closed in the summer. So the budget is based on this assumption around operations, that the MAC will be closed to the public in the summer and reopen September, I think it's September 29th is a Monday, 2 hours, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 for swim lessons, swim team practice, fitness classes, family swim time, independent workout, all those things. It does include no longer offering sports and enrichment programs and recognizing that if any unexpected maintenance, like big capital items come up, that we may need to close the pool during the school year as well. If you look at pages 58 to 63, you'll see the budget assumptions that the board looked at both in their February and March work sessions as we were preparing the budget to understand all of the things that went into building the budget. And then there's also a summary of all those new OHA aquatics facility rules and a comparison of what we do now versus what the new requirements are. So all of that is in the supplemental section of your budget. Ultimately, the goal for the summer for the staff who are retained is to come into compliance with those OHA rules, really do some hard work to elevate our aquatics programs. I'm sorry?
I didn't get a book.
Oh, I thought you were looking at it online. I can give you mine. Just ignore all this. So, there you go.
Is that page
Oh.
68?
Just so I have a clear understanding,
Yes.
can you define sports and?
So it's essentially all of our programs that happen outside of the pool. So flag football, soccer, tackle football, volleyball,
Camps.
youth camps, pickleball, open gym, basketball, all those activities.
Open gym basketball will continue the public health.
Yes, just not with us as a partner. So other projects for the summer, this organization has not done a great job documenting anything. Everything lives in people's brains or with brains that have left the organization. And so during this time over the summer, not only are we going to come into compliance with those laws, but we're also going to set ourselves up for success into the future. So that's developing onboarding and exiting training, reporting and analytics. Our public records are in about 15 different locations across the building. Some of them in permanent records in boxes that could get wet. Like we need to it's on my special projects to-do list and it keeps getting moved down because other things come up. And so part of the goal this summer is to get our act together around all of those pieces. Deep cleaning, public facing spaces, and then potentially doing some partner rentals with our Madras Swim team and with the school district with their summer school program. So that's the proposal that's built into the budget in terms of how the MAC will operate for the fiscal year.
And the board approved those budget assumptions like earlier in the year, or was this year?
The board saw those assumptions and did not have feedback opposing them during those times.
Did you have any public comment? Like when this was presented?
No.
Typically, we don't get anybody to come to the meetings to come. Yeah.
All right, so that's the general fund.
But this conversation has been happening for a while,
Yes.
and people who have attended board meetings have heard some of these
Yeah.
issues. So while you may not have a formal vote, this isn't something that you did without board member. They did give you some feedback in that they said that looks good.
Well, the goal is to put together a budget that then when we get to this table, everyone goes, this is awful, like we did last year. This is awful. Let's redo the whole thing. The goal is to come to this table with assumptions built in that the board has bought into and that are grounded in policies that have already been evaluated. That's the goal. So we'll move on to the debt services fund on page 40. We already talked about this a little bit. I made some assumptions around how much we will collect in taxes for May and June. Our loan from the general fund to the debt service fund is $40,000. I assumed that we would only need to repay $22,260. But now we also have this Pacific Corp tax refund that we found out about after this was made. And as I noted before, the prior year taxes and the interest income can be transferred to the general fund. So you see in the debt service fund, property taxes in the current year that are being levied to repay debt services that are down in the expenditure line of $21,000 in principal and 6% interest, which is $1,260. The resolution that the board adopted for that loan included 6% interest, which is allowable by state law. And then you'll notice that there's no ending cash, and that's because this fund will no longer be needed after this upcoming fiscal year, because the final debt payment was made on May 31st, which is coming up. I just already sent in the transfer paperwork, so. Questions about the debt fund? The maintenance reserve fund is on pages 43 to 45. We are not proposing transferring any additional funds. Right now it has $11,000 in it. That will allow us to replace 2 pumps. They're about $5,000, $5,500 a piece, 6,000, something like that.
And those were last replaced in 23, 24?
Well, just if something goes wrong, that would allow us to do that. That 11,000 really could be used for any thing that comes up that the board approves transferring from the maintenance fund to the general fund. So that's not something I can do as a staff member. That's a board action to make that transfer. That is my presentation of the budget. Happy to answer any questions anyone has.
So my question is, for a while, and you mentioned this, is that the district was pivoting towards using out of water programs to help fund some of the losses at the pool. with the current cuts, you know, how was that decided, or what was the break-even analysis related to whether we have any out of water services or not?
So there's a couple of things. So philosophically, I think there's a sense that with the voters saying no 2 years in a row, they're saying no to a recreation district. Go back to your original mission. And the original mission of the district was water safety, swim lessons, access for families and kids and all those things. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is the land-based programs require a level of staffing because they've grown so much that is requiring more subsidy from general fund dollars. So it used to be that that we were bringing in, they were cost recovering fully the cost of the program. Now we're subsidizing them by about $113,000 a year. And so with those things combined, that was the decision to move toward aquatics only, to go back to that original mission.
Okay, thank you.
Board members jump in if I'm missing anything.
Ask some questions. Hey, when the pool reopens at the end of September, it looks like they're gonna be open for 15 hours a week. Yet you're still employing a lot of people full-time for 15 hours a week. How are you gonna justify those hours and those salaries and that level? It's not that you have a lot of people, because I understand you're gonna be running programs. But it's just such a limited time. Do you have people that are willing to work 15 hours a week?
Yes, and those people are in the budget. So in the budget, there are 3 full-time positions, and the rest are part-time.
And what are your full-time people gonna be doing?
So there's a full-time, well, everybody's cross-trained. So all of the full-time people are certified pool operators, lifeguards, deck supervisors, maintenance, in the pump room in particular, which is where we need most of that work. And swim instructors. So those 3 full-time people can do every function as it relates to all of our activities. When they're not open for those 15 hours, there are a lot of required maintenance, daily, weekly tasks that have to happen with the facility, with chemicals and chemical checks and safety items that are required now. There are lots of documentation stuff that has to happen. My position itself is absorbing an entirely other supervisory position. And so when you think about having 6 people, and if we have 40 people in the pool, or we have 80 people in the pool at a time, that means all 6 of those people are required. And if one of those people's on vacation or sick, the pool shuts down because we don't have the minimum staffing required.
I think part of it is if you're only open, I'm butting in here, but if you're only open 15 hours, okay, so we're only open 15 hours, you just turn the lights off and walk out. With water quality, you can't do that. The water has to be running all the time. The chemicals have to be added. The tests need to be taken. You know, there are certain naturally occurring, cryptosporidium and giardia, and if you don't control those and have that water, so you can't just walk away from the pool. It's still got to run, got to do the maintenance, got to operate. So it's, even though you're not open that much. And once you take those people out of the maintenance mode, and put them in when you have patrons there, then they're not doing that work. So am I getting that?
Yeah.
So
And even though the pools are picked at 3 to 6, there's staff that stay after the closing for cleanup as well, so their hours are not just the 3 hours.
if you just walked out and turned it off, after about a week or so, I would want to get the pool. And probably
Oh,
less time.
3 days.
3 days. I was. Generous. It's
The 6 that we're proposing is the minimum staffing level that we can have to operate the facility. And there are proposals to the board to reduce hours for a couple of those full-time positions that they're going to talk about later in the meeting. And that's on the table for them to decide later.
Yes, just as a budget committee member, I am struggling to approve a budget when I see the number of FTEs and how that correlates to the number of hours that the pool is open and the services being provided. So that's information I want to know before I can vote on this. I know the board is going to take this action after we're going to be expected to make decisions. So I think it's relevant information.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I feel like you're in a tough spot where voters have responded in a negative way 2 times in a row. And I understand the message about let's stick with the pool, but I don't feel like the 3 hours, 5 days a week is going to help. Knowing also though, that there is an expense calculation that has to go into that. I think that this district is in a very hard place where you are darned if you do or darned if you don't, because if you add those hours, you're going to run in a deficit. And how are we going to? There's no funds to recover. You got $693 in your tax.
Well, and my fear is, so let's say we go to 4 hours or 5 hours. One staff member calls out sick and we're closing. And so we're trying to also create consistency with our minimum staffing.
So that you will always be open on stays.
But you'd have to close either way, whether it's 4 hours, 3 hours that you're open, or whether you're open for 4 or 5 hours. So I guess I don't really understand that.
I expect that we will close less with 3 hours than if we have more than that. Based on my experience working with lifeguards in this organization.
Is it also correct that opening, cleanup and closing, cleanup, those things would add a couple hours to each?
It adds about 30 minutes on either side, so it adds about an hour a day.
So if you're open 3 or 4. So,
So when you think about a part-time employee and all the full-time employees, 20 hours of their day are for service provision. And then for the 3 who are 30 to 40 hours a week, then they're doing all of that background stuff when we're not open.
I have a question. Are we voting on this packet or?
They're the same. They're the same. It just looks different because the one that's in the board packet is set up for it being approved and then adopted, whereas the one in your binder shows the measures pass and the measures do not pass. The numbers are all the same.
We're going to page 3. So like this is the recreation programs. This here does not equal 24,000. And then if you go to page 4. See how like these lines don't equal 140 equal 96,000.
Oh, that's because of Excel.
You see how there's like.
it's a general fund.
It's in the general fund.
Go to page 12.
I'm sorry, mine's on page.
Neither. It's so third page back of like this column will be equals up to 19,000, not we're missing like 5, and then this page, we're missing some revenue up. So if something wonky's going really good. Like, what-
With how I printed this. The line, the proposed measures do not pass budget in your packet, in your budget binder is accurate.
So here,
Yes.
but this is wrong.
Well, it must be if it doesn't match, but I went through and made sure that it all was the same, so I'm not sure what's missing. So I would look at your binder. Yeah, that was me trying to be helpful, and clearly it was not.
All you did was take out the.
Yeah, and shifted it over so we could put in the other 2 columns required by local budget law.
See how it's laying over here.
Yeah, Excel is, our printer to Excel does funky things, so.
Something separate, but I'm curious, is the city or county, are they gonna step up and take care of the grounds maintenance around the pool? Is it looking good?
So the budget does include landscaping, and Courtney forgot to call our landscaper to start him back up at the beginning of May. So he's starting this week. That's my fault.
Well, no,
That
that's,
That's my fault. That looks terrible.
we paid for, that's our landscape. We cut a lot of stuff down, so we need to come back and do some more, but I just didn't know. You know, that's an extra expense for you if you have a landscape person. I was just wondering if the city or county covers anything like that.
We've not discussed that.
Are we allowed to ask a question on Facebook here?
I was gonna say, I think we're almost to receive public comment.
Yeah. So let's make sure the budget committee and board has asked the questions that they need to, and then we can open it up to public comment. Are there any more questions or comments from the committee? Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to the public comment section. There will be a 3-minute limit per person, and if you are repeating something that somebody else has said, if you can just say, I agree with so and so or what that person said, and not repeat, that would be very helpful. So do you want to do the people online first? Do you want to do people here?
Whatever you want, Madam Chair.
All right, let's do public comments from people that are here first. If you would like to ask a question or have a comment, you can stand up and we'll do our best to.
They've actually got to come up and speak on the microphone so people on Zoom can hear. Thank you, Nyla.
Or anyone in the audience?
Who wants to go first? You want to go by the list?
I don't have a list.
I was say, yeah, it's, thank you, Amber. You could just read down the.
Bunny Hartley.
Say, if you want to hand it to.
Thank you.
Bunny, if you could speak in the microphone that's right there, that would be great.
I'm Diane, they better known by Bunny here at the pool. I'm an avid lap swimmer. And my question is, this is situations severely impacting people that come here for fitness. And I'm included in that. Is there any possibility that a person could pay more money and get admission to the pool at all? Because this is just devastating to so many people. And I hear a lot of talk, you know, on social media, and a lot of it is just absolute garbage. And it makes no sense to me.
but I hear so much distrust in so many people. And I was thinking of how in the world we could regain some of that trust in the community in order for when we do finally submit another budget proposal of any kind. In my mind, the only way to achieve that is for somebody to make a sacrifice here that works here. And I don't like saying this because I don't think it's right. But, and I don't think these people are right, but in order to reestablish some trust, taking a pay cut would be a symbolic way to try and reach these people that think there's corruption and there's all these things that are bad here. To me, it even though I don't think you deserve it, I think you're doing a good job here. I am not a part of that lunacy. But in order to reach those people that feel that way, I think it might be a positive step.
Great, thank you very much. Next up, we have, is it Jamin
Oh, he's not.
or Amanda?
No, we're not.
Okay. Nayla?
No.
Okay, sorry. Russell? If you, yep, talking to that mic.
Yep. Name's Russ. My daughter's been going to private swim lessons here for just over a year, 5 years old. She's doing things that a 5-year-old shouldn't do in the pool because of this place. Speaking about agreeing with the lady earlier about the social media, education to the people in social media. I've seen board members here just get hammered on false everything. They're speaking truth. These people are bashing them for false information. I myself have been spoken to, people telling me that there are people inside this facility making $400,000 a year. Simple education tells you it's not. I've had 2 people in one day tell me that in one instance. At the same time, a simple 3-minute Google, oh, we're wrong. You know, the other thing that I would say, and maybe having some community volunteer hours, for instance, I'm a technologist, I own an IT company. Is there a step up that we can do as community as a volunteer factor to help with the technology upgrades, technology assessments, technology work? That's something I can do. Is there a forum, a way the community can get involved in that volunteer to help offset some of this cost factoring of this budget to maybe keep it open a tad bit longer?
Thank you for those comments. I don't have anyone else signed up on here. Is there anyone else here that would like to come up and speak? Go ahead. If you would. Yeah, come up here. It's nice. It's just so that people online can hear us and that it's recorded.
My name is Becky Moran. I came here 13 years ago and my name was Mary's sister. So I'm Mary Hollis's sister, but I go by it. So I would like to make like you were talking about volunteers, especially how many lap swims do you think? And how much time do they usually use in the pool? They're probably all, if they're not lifeguards, wouldn't take much to make them lifeguard. So just put in 1 hour a week or whatever you want. Like instead of telling people to cut salaries, why can't we just donate some extra time?
Those are good questions. I think honestly, has to be some type of limitation due to certification requirements for volunteers. Right. The other thing is that coordinating volunteers requires time. And I think that could be a valid option, but it also requires staff to keep track of who's coming, who can't show up and things like that. I think that Courtney also has been pursuing a lot of grant opportunities and things to help with this, but I am crushed that we're in the thought getting creative is a good solution. I think that, however, when we are looking to approve a budget, in a way we have to approve the worst case scenario with the idea that maybe we could come up with other options, but it would be not a great sound idea to build our budget based upon
Yeah.
if that makes sense, but I agree, I think it would be wonderful if we could incorporate these things.
Those laps, early morning lap swimmers are dedicated, they're the same ones every morning again. And they really want to keep it, so it might be an option that they would, I mean, I can sit at the top of them. Slide at the bottom, and at what hours of vote, how often is the sliding? Everything gonna be closed off, the rest we do, I still don't understand that.
Yeah, I think the proposed budget hours are fairly small. It looked like after school starts, they would be from 3 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday without any lap swimming and mornings. So that is what the current budget has, is very, very limited hours.
Why would you put out the lap swim?
I think Courtney could speak to that as far as how that generates.
It doesn't take as many, I mean,
So lap swimming will be available from that 3 to 6 time period. It just we won't have morning hours like we have right now.
Which is unfortunate, I work out of so that's a hard thing to change, but again, I do feel like this budget is very conservative, and they're, that movie Hope Floats. I think all of us who are involved with the pool have a measure of hope in our hearts that something is going to change, and that something will happen, that will keep our pool open for more hours. It is disappointing to think of this pool only being 15 hours a week. When, I mean, look at this place.
it's the best swimming pool around.
It is, but at the same time, Courtney and the board have tried to manage what they have in front of them. And I think that managing all the Facebook and social media stuff has been very difficult. And there was a group of dedicated people who worked hard to positively promote the yes measure, and it just didn't garner enough momentum. And I think, as Courtney mentioned, this is the second time that this hasn't passed. So she, unfortunately, and the board are at a spot where they have to meet. And I don't think that limits our ability to go out later to do other things, but at this point, we have to approve a budget based upon what we know for right now. But I appreciate your comments. I don't want anyone to feel like we're not this, but there is a reality here to be met.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment
In the room.
in the room? Do we have any public comment on Zoom? If you can, I think there's a raise your hand feature.
Or you can just unmute. You don't know how to do that. Is there anyone on Zoom with questions or comments that you'd like to offer at this time during public comment?
Easier to talk on Facebook. No.
Not hearing.
Okay, so now
Can you hear
that
me? I'm here.
Yep. Sheila.
Sorry.
No, that's
Yeah.
okay. Is that you? Okay.
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry about that. I can't hear right now. I just had a couple of questions. My main one question was, have you had a chance to look at any other polls, or I mean, you might have said this, and I'm sorry if I didn't hear it. Compare other polls, because it just sounded like a whole bunch of maintenance issues with this pool since day one, and it sounded like we were in the hole for a long time ago from previous stuff, like you said. And so I was just curious, if there was other pools that are even close to this pool that you could have, compare or anything like that to try to, it's a little late now, I know, because of the vote, of course, but I just was curious if there was any other areas or whatever that you could reach out to see if they had the same problems you had, because it just seemed like a never-ending battle.
Mind if I?
yeah, Courtney's gonna speak to this.
Yeah, so we do have a professional group of aquatics folks that we talk to across the state. And have also reached out to folks in other communities across the country through the AAOP, which is the Association of Aquatics Operations Professionals. And what I can tell you is that every pool struggles with this. It's not unique to us. And our pool is 17 years old and did not have a lot of preventative maintenance done over that 17 years. So for the situation that we're in, I don't think it's uncommon for other aquatics facilities. And a 25 cent per thousand permanent tax rate is just insufficient to operate an aquatics facility, and also be able to do maintenance when it's 17 years old. So that's what I guess I would say to that question.
Do you
I just
have
had
another question?
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Sheila.
Oh, I just had one other thing that so I'm always usually working, and I've tried to go a couple of different times, and every time I've tried to go, it's been shut down or something else. And so for the working class person, I found it really hard to want to vote yes when everything I just listened to this evening sounds like you're trying to stay afloat by doing like the school activities or different activities that are going to be guaranteed that those people are coming to go to that. So it's like I don't feel like it's really for the community people, like the working class people like me. So I mean, unless something changed, which I love the pool and I'm all for it, but unless something changed where I could actually utilize it, that's the problem I had with the whole vote. And I haven't seen that really with the hours that you're talking. I don't even see how I would ever even make it for those hours that you're even mentioning.
Yeah, Sheila, at least for me as a community member also, and happening to work here, I agree with you. Our hours have been terrible, and it's because we've had to make a choice between having more hours and staffing it or replacing capital items that needed to be replaced because there's only so many dollars. And so the last 3 years, it's just been one year after another, reducing hours, reducing the number of people that can be in the pool at a certain time because we don't have the staff for it. And so it's just it just so happened that it coincided that we hit 15 years old after COVID sort of happened. And all of a sudden, filters started going, they're $45,000 a piece. Boilers started needing repairs. And I've seen and heard a lot of people say it seems like since COVID, we haven't reopened back like we were before. And it's true because we've had to make some really difficult decisions about where the funding goes. And that's why the hours are terrible. And I feel you. I have kids who are always angry at me. They can't come swim too. So, I mean, I totally get it and agree with you. It's just we're between a rock and a hard place.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else online? Okay, so now that public comment is over, the next item is for budget committee deliberation. So this is where we can kind of talk about options, think about if you would like Courtney to answer any questions. So this is kind of your time to say what you think.
We've already.
I'm not comfortable with tonight's budget as is, just given what you're gonna decide on later this evening. I feel like I could make a more confident vote when we have, like, this could be corrected. We see a summary, so, sorry, I'm just going through this, and there's things that are in here that aren't here. So can there just be a clerical check that we have complete on what time? And yeah, I just, not tonight. Decide, and then if there's a revision, we do a bunch of like budget amendments. That's why we have it proposed first.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Temperature check. Alexa, it sounded like maybe you had some questions about the FTE numbers, and which may be something that is talked about this evening in the budget or in the board meeting.
Yeah, I would like to know a little more myself. I actually agree with Brandy on this one.
Anybody else?
I do have one more thing I'd like to see when we come back for another budget meeting, and depending on what you decide tonight, but you have that 45,000 of contractual services and administration. If there is a game plan that's gonna happen in like the next 90 days of, hey, we're gonna hire a consultant to help us. We have spent so much over the years on these plans and guides of what you should do here, what you should do there. I mean, maybe it's time for a completely independent assessment. Like the board, it's like the hard thing to face, but you're like, no, I wanna hire somebody that has no bias and like somebody segregate, and yeah, it's that tough contractual. I would like to see dollars specifically designated for a game plan consultant, because I feel like at this point we need it to it's failed twice. We just need something that's unbiased, that will give us guidance.
And Courtney, did we pay for that plan that came out that showed, were they unbiased or were they pool people?
Well, they're consultants that
Yeah.
do recreation districts across the country.
So they came back to us that a district like this needs a rate like this.
Yeah, but that was for a vote, now that it's failed, it's like we need a consultant to tell us, okay.
Fill it in with Congress and get the agenda. Look at it.
Yeah, like what can we do with what we got, and not go to starters, but you know, we have here.
Has this board had discussions about just going out for another local option operating levy?
Well, we potentially will if we can stay afloat to get to that point. What is it in 26? November 26th?
Yeah, November
Yeah.
26th, May 27.
Talk about some things we can ask for in a bond, such as the new pool line, $1 million. We know we're gonna need it. We don't know when it's gonna fail. We could try that, but it still doesn't address the fact that this district does not have a permanent rate that covers operations and maintenance, and we can beat it around over and over again. Oh, people are paid too much, and even if you took $50,000 out of Courtney's wages, it's not gonna keep this pool open 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. Run the numbers.
I want to clarify your question. You want somebody to come in and say what the facility use could change to, or what the facility needs to actually, the work that has to be done to keep it viable as a pool?
It would be nice to see like, okay, this is exactly what dollars you have coming in based on their industry experience. This is what you can do within this parameter. Courtney is, you know, she's done the numbers, but like 3 hours a week or 5 days a week, then you're not gonna get any community support going out for another levy in 2026 at 3 hours. It's all you're doing. Get more than maintenance. So if you don't, I like the presentation on like you gotta take out like. We need to make business decisions, not decisions based on political influence or people's feelings. You gotta make it based on the numbers that are here, and right now, the budget that we're being presented, I'm not cool with it. I'm like, no, we gotta be open more than 3 hours. Well, if that means implementing an elder volunteer program to watch laps swimming. Sorry, that probably is not correct, but I'm just being honest, like, you gotta think creative when you're in hard times.
Absolutely, but don't we have some restrictions on the volunteer? It can't just bring somebody in and say, hey, watch these people.
So pay equity doesn't allow volunteers to do work that you pay people for. There are a lot of restrictions in law around what we can do with volunteers in our facility, both from a liability perspective and from a pay equity perspective.
And contribution the end of this month, right?
Right, but then it's still an expense. It's still an expense.
And not. I just see it how much
I've been on,
it really is.
I've been on. One of the things I don't know why I did, I've been on Facebook quite a bit. And my entire time is trying to.
That's,
provide
we were
correct
told
information
by our
on
risk
wages.
attorney through SDAO.
Very consistent thing was, we need to get somebody volunteers. Whenever I said,
That's,
okay, what?
maybe there's an
can I
exception
say?
for those. I don't know, but that's what
Okay,
we were told.
The other thing is, we need to split hours or cut wages or whatever. All of our employees have community members. And, you know, I worked as an employee for however many 50 years or whatever it is. And to me, that's abusing our employees. We have good people, they're community members, and to ask them to take pay cuts for people that don't want to pay to use the pool is an abuse of our employees. The numbers are here. When we asked for the budget, we were gonna get what, 1.9 or 1.7 for million for if the budget passed
Mhm.
or redistricting, and that's what it takes. And you could vary at $200,000, but that's what it takes to fully fund the hours and do the repairs to keep this sustainable. Because it doesn't do any of this, anything, further right by the budget, and then 3 weeks from now, the border blows up, and then we have to shut down for 6. So it would let me nothing happier than go 80 hours a week, fix everything, have a maintenance budget, but that's not what the board told us we could do. Now, if you want to talk about changing the use of the facility, you don't love it either. That is a thing that we can certainly look at. But putting a gym floor in here, I've done the estimates, the construction. That it would cost over $1 million to put the gym floor. To convert this to a gymnasium. So we are, and I know that Courtney has talked about having a consultant come in and walk the building and tell us their opinion of what everything that needs to be brought up with a state standard, state. And but I'm not talking out of turn, I'm not irritating anybody on the budget committee, but the numbers are the numbers. And changing them by 10 or 15%, even with volunteers, doesn't get us that.
Question. With all the seniors and the insurance and stuff, with us not being able to go in and pull now, aren't we gonna be losing money? Cause that money's not coming back. If the insurance is gonna get charged, people being not there.
So 2 things. 1, yes, membership revenues were reduced significantly. And 2, from 3 to 6, there will be opportunities for folks who have those memberships to use the facility. But you're right. I mean, it's a reduction in available hours.
So you know you're guaranteed approximately $763,000 a year.
Mhm.
in your books. Has the board gone through the exercise of like, hey, this is what we have, this is what we mandatory know we have to pay, which is insurance, the utilities, like, that's not in our budget. Those would be things like, what, because if you're trying to justify the level of FTEs, well, actually you get $763,000 less the mandatory costs, then that's where your cushion is on how you can operate.
I'm not sure we can look at the full 763 though, because the local option living isn't a guarantee. We could be out of that next year.
Well, and really the 763 plus you're taking a tax anticipation note county every year.
Yeah, so you have to take that out.
So you have to take that out. So really only leave.
So there's a memo that is online and is part of the board packet for this evening that has that analysis in it. For what the base cost is.
I asked Courtney to run the numbers. If we put plywood up, chain the doors so that we don't have stagnant water, we're not, in violation of any laws and, default on any of our financials that we have to do. What is that number? And Courtney ran it.
But that's the
It is-
decision. And. Second. It's really hard to look up.
So that number is $594,839. That's to bring it to the minimums that are required for the health code and keep it functional so that it can open back up. If you were to just shut the whole place down and say we're never reopening again, it's $391,595 to operate it for 6 months. To roll it down. And that would be shutting it down permanently, because then to reopen it after that, it would cost that 1 to 2 million of investment.
So it's 500,000 to just keep it
Sit closer to
without any use.
right.
If nothing breaks.
Right.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of those decisions way before today. And maybe not the best decisions, but that's what was left to this board. And I think the board's done a great job trying to keep things in consideration, trying to keep it.
So Brandy, I think we've already paid for a portion of what you suggested. Having that outside consultant tell us, does it really take to run a facility like this in the state of Virginia?
And what is that?
They came back with the range of the permanent rate from what was it, 122 to
120, it was 1.5 million was the subsidy number that they gave us. So they said if you have 1.5 million in tax revenues,
But what would the rate be? You know,
it was $1.22 to $1.26 or something like that.
they're not cheap, John.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember seeing a graph in one of the plans that we were given before that like showed the seasonal revenue trends, and summer was like one of the highest peak revenue times. Like
No,
the highest cost or
it's the highest cost.
Well,
peak-
some of the sports, if you include the sports in.
Yeah, if you're just looking at aquatics, the peak revenue times are November to February when swim teams are using the pool.
but that's not public revenue, that's school revenue. Or what they were saying is revenue from sources, no.
It's revenue. I'm just looking at revenue.
And I think like that, for I would like to keep full, but. He told me that to keep full open for the summer would cost us $284.
Yeah,
I think it
I've got it.
down here. The revenue for the summer is 23,000.
it's 28,000 for
28,000.
aquatics.
Yeah, for a clock.
Being up 3 days, 3 hours, 5 days.
No, that's being open the hours that from 6 to 6.
Only 23,000 for 90 days.
what's that?
There's a cash flow analysis in this memo that shows the monthly revenues and expenditures for the last 7 years. It's over on the table if anybody wants to grab it, and you can see it's important to recognize that that includes revenues for all of the programs that may not be offered next year. And so that shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 years of month-to-month revenues and expenses.
What you were getting at, what he was saying is that the cost to run it at a more regular 6 to 6 for the summer would be $280 some thousand, and we would bring in $28,000 of revenue.
Yes, and then we use our tax anticipation loan as well. But I also would remind everyone, we took 40,000 out of that to make our final bond payment. And so we only have $210,000 to get us through this until November. So that, I mean, that, I don't want to close there's some assumption out there that we don't want to work, that we don't want the pool open. We don't want to close the pool. The numbers are the numbers. And we have so many stakeholders that want to be in this facility, and no one's ever going to be happy. And so when I think about and when I'm presenting to the board, when I think about the original mission, it's swim lessons, it's water safety, it's swim team, it's 9 months of operations versus 3 for people who may or may not come and swim. Sorry.
Because summer participation is lower.
No, we have high participation in summer. Most of them are out of district swimmers who come and swim, and they pay a little bit more, so that helps. But I would say I would rather serve less with group swim lessons and contracted swim lessons and swim team than serve a bunch of out of towners for open swims.
Correct me if there is no program, no time that generates enough revenue to cover the cost of operating during that time.
Correct.
It is always a negative. So offering more free swims, offering whatever is not a revenue generator that can help the budget.
So my position was, we hashed this around about when to close, if we have to close, and I felt summer was the best time, going back to the first failed attempt. And we saw it and heard it from the public again the second time around. Oh, we've got lakes, we've got rivers to swim in. Okay, swim in them this summer. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to close. And we'll try to open back up this fall.
If you really think about it. You can't drive from here to Portland on 5 gallons of gas. You just don't have enough in the tank to get it. And that takes genius to figure this out. We don't have money. And we don't want to close during the summer, but that's a loss leader. We need the cash flow to get to November. So what do you do? I mean, I think bringing in an expert, first thing you're going to say is, you can't survive on 25 cents. That's easy.
Think about suggestions, worst case scenario, if that's a shutdown or a consolidation with another district, has to happen. It's bad to put it on the table, but
Where'd the money go?
well, it's been talked about in years past and consolidating the pool with the city at one time. It's,
And the city's like,
yeah, the city doesn't want it.
board of that.
We got $693 left over in your budget. $690.
That's not 43,000. Because they have the tax anticipation to flow their cash flow till the they say.
Staff leave to bring in a consultant?
No, this is the board hiring somebody to say, please come up with this in the solution that we.
Yeah, I was a consultant for a long time.
So I'm sorry, to be a little bit of order here. So the public comment, part is closed. So if we can just remain talking within the committee and stuff, I'm sorry to do that. I know that this is so sensitive.
How do we move on? I mean, we've all given our opinions, but I don't know.
So everybody here except for Courtney is a voting member of the budget committee, so you can make a motion to approve the budget as is. You can make a motion to delay the budget for another hearing after the board meets. There's a multitude of options.
We do have a second budget committee noticed for June 4th. So it is an option to recess the budget committee to June 4th. And then the other options are to make a motion to approve the budget or make a motion to amend and approve the budget.
I make a motion that we postpone the approval of the budget until after our board meeting tonight, which is gonna make some significant changes to what you guys are looking at.
So would you
One way or
suggest that we reconvene on board?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a motion to postpone and to continue this budget meeting until June 4th. Do I have a second? I have a second from Steve. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you. And everybody, thank you so much for all of your work. And thank you, public, for this meeting. This is not where we all. So.
What was the date? June?
June 4th.
June 4th at 6 p.m. Here and on Zoom.
So budget committee members, you are excused. The board is having a meeting. We, as budget committee members, can sit in the audience for this if you would like to hear the report.
Madam Chair, can I have you officially adjourn the meeting?
Yes, the meeting is adjourned at 7:53 p.m. Would the board like a break? I'll jump right into it. Potty break? Okay. Take 5 and I think quickly we go.
I'm gonna shut that.
To convene the Madison Aquatic Center Recreation District Board of Directors business meeting. The time is now 8:02. Roll call. Chair Siebold is present. Vice Chair Lewis is absent. Secretary Treasurer McCloskey. Present. Board Member Maynard. Board Member Dominguez.
Present.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our land acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some had lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. In Central Oregon, we are standing on the ancestral lands of the Wasco, Warm Springs, and Paiute people. We pay respects to their elders past and present. Okay, next on our agenda, looking to adopt the agenda. If somebody would care to move, so move. Thank you, Frank. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jean. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have information items, standing and timely updates.
Okay, board members, you have in your board packet a draft policy, cost recovery policy. And this is something that we've been working on. You have in your packet, the first thing related to this is the current cost recovery system, which was adopted in 2015. As you'll recall, when we had BRS consultants do our business plan evaluation, they said that we were recovering 23%, which is not consistent with our existing cost recovery system. Our current cost recovery requires that we recover 75% of the cost for aquatics through fees. And so staff put our heads together and looked at a number of different cost recovery methodologies and wanted to give you some food for thought. It is listed on the business meeting as an action item, and I want you to know that if you want more time to think about it or tonight's not the night for this, you can postpone the conversation to a future board meeting. So this is just an analysis of how we could be doing cost recovery. So the new policy that is being proposed, and let me step back. Cost recovery is when something costs 100%, there's 100% of cost to everything, right? And how much of that do you recover through fees versus subsidy from property taxes or grants or donations? You have to get to 100% of the cost, but the way that you get to 100% could be through a variety of ways. So our cost recovery policy that we're proposing the board consider looks at access as the way of determining how much you charge. So for programs that are individualized, a private swim lesson, a private rental, we would charge between 125% and 150% cost recovery, which means that the fees are bringing in 125 to 150% of the cost of that service. The reason you charge more than 100% is because then you can use those extra funds to then subsidize other things that you're not fully cost recovering. So the next line down, you'll see few. So these are programs that few people have access to: competitive club activities, pre-registration required, special events. And for the few, it would be 100 to 125% cost recovery. Then you get down into what we mostly do, which is access for some. These are pre-registration required recreation activities like group swim lessons or Little Otter's toddler activities. Nonprofit or public rentals, because some are accessing those. We would say, well, those could be 75 to 100% cost recovery, and there should be some subsidy going towards some of those programs. If access is available to most, our drop-in activities like our fitness classes, our open swim, open gym, basketball, for example, perhaps that's a 50%, 25 to 50% cost recovery. And then if you go down, 25 to 50% subsidy. And you go down to all, so this could be if we do health fair. So this past spring, we hosted 3 health fairs in this facility. We did not charge them. We felt like it was access for all. Why would we charge them to use the building? So for those, we would charge 0 to 50% in terms of fees. So let me give you some examples. And in your packet, you saw examples of existing programs that are within our budget to continue, our aquatics programs. So what you see here is an analysis of our group swim lessons. And on the left side, we have the number of minimum participants. So we'd have to have at least 2 people enrolled in the class. And on the right-hand side, you see that the maximum in that group class is 4. And you go down to we have all the costs associated with it. So that we have an aquatics lead who coordinates all of our swim lessons, does the trainings, does all of that. We have swim instructors who teach those classes. We have pool chemicals, utilities, and maintenance that we've got the budget there, and then a certain percentage that are included in those direct costs for using the facility. So you can see the total direct cost for 2 participants is $263. Then if you go down to indirect costs, we build in front desk time to register them and answer questions they may have, a portion of our liability insurance, registration support. We pay up to 7% fees through ActiveNet registration system. And so the total cost for both direct and indirect for that program for 2 kids or people to be in that group swim lesson is $318. And so the cost recovery at $125 for that group swim lesson is 79%. So what this cost recovery says is that we should be charging out of district $125 and in district $100 for group swim lessons. Okay, so that's one example. A second example, if you continue, is our junior swim team, which is a new program we started this year that has been very popular. A lot of kids are participating in the program, and hopefully it's creating a pipeline to our competitive swim team and then to the high school swim team. Same thing with this program. We looked at it and said, okay, minimum of 10 participants, maximum of 25. With all of the costs associated with it, we could charge out of district 125 and in district 100 and be between 100, be at 100% cost recovery on the minimums, but then make a little money on the maximums to then subsidize other programs. If we don't have 10 people signed up, we don't run the program because then we're not meeting cost recovery. We continue, the next one is private swim lessons. So this is an individual level of access. The minimum is 1 participant. Sometimes we have folks that request siblings do it together, but they both pay for that fee. The total direct expenses and indirect, and you can see that we're at about 124% cost recovery if we charge 325 out of district and 260 in district. And then finally, no, this is not finally, contracted swim lessons. These are the swim lessons that mostly school districts take advantage of. We've worked with High Desert ESD, Terrebonne Community Schools, Madras Christian School, homeschool swim lessons, and 509J School District are all the different contracted classes that we do for swimming. It's a different model from our group swim lessons and from our private swim lessons because we have one instructor per 10 students. And so it's not as expensive as the other ways that we teach swim lessons. Because of the cost recovery, we can charge 75 per student out of district and 60 per student in district for that program and be at 126% cost recovery at the minimums. And then this is the final one. This is the facility rentals. And so it's very tiny and I'm sorry. When we look at the new model health code requirements, whether someone is renting the lap pool or the leisure pool, the same amount of staffing is needed. So, and especially when you add in the slide. So as we talked about it, we said, well, it'll be the same for a leisure pool, slide pool, or a lap pool if you rent the whole thing. And so the cost recovery comes out to $375 an hour out of district, $300 in district for renting the full slide and leisure pool or the full lap pool. And then the whole facility is not much more because it's still the same level of minimum staffing. And then as you add lifeguards, if someone wants to bring 200 people versus 120, then there's an upcharge because we're having to have more staff with a maximum of 6. So this is built in with our staffing that we plan for in the budget. It would be $500 an hour out of district and $400 an hour in district. Right now, we're charging $325 in district for a full facility rental. And then when you look at per lane cost, we essentially took the lap pool and divided it by 6 because we still have to have the same number of staff, even if there's just 2 people in the pool. The minimum staffing doesn't change. You still have to have 2 guards, a deck supervisor. And so the out of district for per lane is $31 and the in district is $25 according to this cost recovery. So those are just some examples of all the programs that we're planning to run in the fall under this new proposed cost recovery policy. The policy doesn't change if somehow we add back land-based programs or we add some new activity. Staff then goes to this policy and says, what's our cost recovery? And then we develop this spreadsheet. The board would not approve fees annually anymore under this new cost recovery plan. If you approve the cost recovery policy, then you delegate this process to staff. Does anybody have any questions?
So this was first implemented in 2015-16, and have we changed those rates since then?
The rates have changed. When I came on, we did cost recovery worksheets based on that and said there is no way we are charging that. We did increase our fees, but not to the level of this cost recovery methodology that's currently existing. When I first came on, we presented the board with and Janelle's not here, she's the only one that was here at that time, but we presented the triangle, which is what many districts have, which is the top is individual and the bottom is the most benefit to the most people. It's very rigid. So what we're proposing is a little bit more flexible, and it gives us a range rather than a specific amount that we have to hit.
Well, the cost recovery answers some of the high points that have been brought out about let those who use it pay for it.
There's no other questions. I'll keep on trucking. Okay. Updates on grants and fundraising. I showed that during the budget committee meeting, but I'll go to it again anyway. Sorry, let me scroll down. So we've got about $49,000 in grants that have been submitted since January that we've not heard back on. A couple of them are related to tackle football. So if we got them, one of them is 19,000 of it is related to tackle football. The remaining 30,000 is related to either youth workforce development or domestic water heater replacement. We've also identified a number of grants we can apply for, hopefully for the locker room revitalization project. We need to get further in our evaluation of that before we can apply for these grants, but I wanted to have them on a list for the future so that we can look at those. And then capital improvement and maintenance projects. We're gonna replace the domestic water heater, hopefully during the summer, before we reopen in the fall. And those are my information item updates.
Thank you, Courtney. Next up, we have correspondence.
There was no correspondence to include in the packet this month.
Okay, next up, we have visitor section public comment. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the board of directors during this time. They should have signed in at the beginning of the meeting to be recognized by the board chair. Speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. We'll start with those in the room. If anyone will come up to the chair so you're speaking to the microphone. Seeing no one in the room, is there anyone online who would care to speak?
You can just unmute if you would like to speak.
Seeing no one online, then we will close the opportunity for public comment. Financial reports.
Board members, in your packet, you have the April financials. The first thing in your packet is the balance sheet. For cash on hand, we're down about 6.9% from the prior year. Most of the funds that are in that are being used in May for our debt payment that is due on May 31st. As you go down, you can see accounts payable is up a bit, as are our active liabilities. ActiveNet is our registration system. Payroll is down 8.5%. Vacation accrued is down almost 54%. And so that's the balance sheet. When you go to the month-end profit and loss for the month of April, I would just note a couple things. One, property taxes, again, as I've been saying every month, are not coming in at the level we expect, and it's mostly due to the refunds that have happened. Memberships were up 125% in April. We continue to add seniors who are covered by both Optum memberships and Silver and Fit memberships. Facility rentals were 117% above budget. Everything we have control over looks great from a revenue perspective. When you continue down to expenses, we did get a full 4 hours of lifeguard training in this month for the first month in a while. And as a result, you can see our personnel services were over by about $4,300. Some of that is also that we had swim lessons in April for 2 of the 509J elementary schools that we had budgeted to have in October. So that's some of that increase as well. When you look at materials and services for this month, just a few things to note. Under facilities expenses, and I think I noted it on yours, but it's not on mine. So I'm going to look at yours.
Exterior door repairs.
So we had to do some repairs to our exterior door. That was close to $2,000. We also... There was something else. Oh, we had to, with the new OHA rules, we spent about $600 on some things we needed for the pump room, which was $500 over budget. So it shows us 662% over budget.
Courtney, for those exterior doors, is that the ADA?
Yes. Yep. trying to see.
Do you think it made those doors harder to physically open after they did those repairs to them?
Well, so
I'm weak, I'm getting weak, I guess.
So what I will tell you is there's something going on with the pressure
Yeah.
of the natatorium. So, and I think it's because my office door was open.
And you're the.
So I need to shut my office.
If you shut, let the door shut. You talk about two bedrooms. If you let both doors shut and you try to open one, it will be much easier. If you try to open one when another one's open, then it's gonna.
Well, and then the other X factor is, are the doors to the natatorium or the locker room open? And that's what creates that negative pressure. Yeah, I know. It's. So overall, our expenses were about 7,000 over budget, and our revenues came in around 3,200 over budget. If you go to the next one, which is our balance sheet, this is our most recent balance sheet after the payment on the bond. And I put this in your packet because I want you to be very aware of our cash position right now going into the summer months. We have, as of May 27th, $275,000 to operate from May 27th to October 30th. So that's about $55,000 a month. When you look at our cash flow analysis that shows the last 6 years, in the summer, we generally transfer about $75,000 a month. So the math doesn't work for cash flow between May 27th and October 30th. The bulk of our property taxes come in November. We pay back the $250,000 tax anticipation loan, and then that has to last us the next 6 months. We are in a payday loan cycle.
And Courtney,
As
remind
a
me,
district.
our average is about 18,000 a month for utilities.
Oh, let's go up and look. No, that's fine. It's right up. It's right here. Yeah, it's about 18,000.
And that doesn't factor in the chemicals too. I thought we were closer to 25. This last one we were anyway, just for the basic pool operations.
It depends on bodies in the water and how much we're using. It depends on bather load, I guess is the way to say that if I'm using the OHA language. And it also depends on the weather outside and, you know, the temperature and all the things. But yeah, it's somewhere between, I would say probably 15,000 and 30,000, depending on the month, is utilities. The next thing in your packet is a budget to actual from July 1st, 2024 through May 25th, when I ran this report. And we're at about 95% collections on property taxes. This is super tiny for anyone trying to see it out there. I'm sorry. Here, I'll try and make it a little bit bigger. Well, that might help a little bit. I'm sorry. Total income is at about 83% of budget. And we have one more month of operations. We are not going to hit probably higher than 88% of budget, I would say, for revenues. For expenses, personnel is at about 84% of budget. Let's see, materials and services, or I'm sorry, 87%. Materials and services is about 85% of budget. And so overall, we're about 0.6% more for expenses than revenues when you look at the budget to actuals. And then when you look at the debt service fund, you can see that our payments have been made, and right now we're sitting, it's showing a net income of 32,000 on our actuals. And I want you to remember that what our P&L says is different from what our balance sheet says as it relates to cash. So our balance sheet is the best place to look for cash, and our profit and loss statement is the place to look for our position, if that makes sense. And that is my financial report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Board Treasurer, do you have anything to add? from your review.
Frank, Irby, any questions?
I don't.
All right, then moving on, consideration for approval of consent agenda, care to so move.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
The consent agenda.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Frank, for the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, next on our agenda, consider approval of a reduction in force in response to the May 2025 election outcome.
Can we talk, I know, can we talk about something else? I mean, I want to talk about that. So I know we had some options on the table, but Brandy brought up getting a consultant. Why don't we, I mean, I don't even know if this is an option, but what about laying off Courtney, using that money to pay the consultant, come in so he can, or whoever, she give us what their professional opinion is on how this is gonna run, how we can sustain it, and show that we're not hiding any numbers, that nothing's under the table, and this is what it is.
We've already had that done. I think Courtney could give you a copy of it.
Okay,
Oh,
so,
well, I was gonna say, what Irby's suggesting is scenario 3.
Yeah, Irby, that's the
Okay.
interim executive
Okay.
director.
okay. So that is scenario 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a half, it's been.
Oh, the BRS study?
Yeah.
That came, this we put off.
Right, and that was the 122 to 127, correct? And that's, okay.
And option 3 contemplated laying off the executive director and hiring a consultant that could help the board navigate privatization, county, having someone who has more experience with that RFP process and talking about how to potentially merge districts. What Brandy was talking about, that's what scenario 3 is really
So
contemplating.
that's what he wants.
Well, a suggestion,
Yeah.
she didn't know that there'd already been a
Okay.
consultant hired and.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is our option.
Mhm.
Okay, our scenario. All right, thank you. For explaining that.
We will do a doctor.
Well, so going over these scenarios, this is our chance now to discuss.
Yes.
2, 3, 4. I think 3 and 4 would be what we're looking at when the local option like.
Yeah.
And we can start making plans, towards that.
So you don't think we should do option scenario 3 right now?
No, I think that's pretty severe, and that's what's gonna happen with the local option. Then we're gonna be looking for the city or the county to put the rules. I think right now it's between scenarios 1 and 2.
And members of the public, there's copies of this memo on the table if you don't already have it, if you want to follow along with us.
So scenario 2. With the monthly. Yeah. The hours, yeah, like we talked about,
Oh, the 30, the hard numbers.
hard numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So scenario 2 with modifications. Can you list out those modifications? So I can.
The recreation director position will be potentially completely eliminated and we need to find it. We would like to retain that position for at least a few months this summer to do some wrap-ups procedures and help with the downtime. The transition.
Making it hourly, not to exceed 30 hours.
And then going down this list of the executive director hours, making it a hard 30.
Yep.
Right.
Moving down.
salary, moving to hourly, not salary, and possibly for all these others too, rather than a floating hour. I think if we're closed, we can make it a hard 30, 30, 30, down here 20, 20, 20. But that's just my thought.
Or less, because we'll
I
have
like
some
not
staff
to
that want to work
exceed.
less.
Yeah, I like not to exceed.
Not to exceed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, I hate to do this to the staff, but we need to retain the minimum staff so that we can hope to open up with certified.
Yeah.
Lifeguards and instructors in the fall.
And are those hard not to exceeds unless
So what
approved by
Yeah.
supervisor?
we could do something like executive director not to exceed 30 hours unless approved by
Unless prior approval.
unless prior approval garnered by
Or.
board chair. Or vice chair, following line of succession that way. And then everyone else not to exceed unless prior approval. Garnered from direct provider, which, yeah,
I just popped my pen.
we're that excited. Yeah.
So, board members, with that in mind, do you want me to revise the proposed budget to reflect
Yeah.
these reductions? I'm
Yes,
seeing
please.
yeses. Okay.
Yeah.
And are these reductions in hours for the summer or for the whole fiscal year?
On this, for the stuff.
For the summer.
Get us
Okay.
to that open.
Yeah.
And OHA compliance comes September.
Yep.
And I'm thinking by August, we'll be able to take a better look at the budget and where we're at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, we can hope for a windfall and
Yeah.
maybe hours can be increased.
Need by lot.
Well, the clerk still had $220 again.
No.
Oh, she did it? So now hope for tomorrow.
We're at 107.
And if I may ask too for direction, we had contemplated offering opportunities for partner organizations to utilize the facility during the summer. Can I get direction on that as well? Please.
Speak up somebody else besides me.
Partner facilities such as.
Partner organizations
Partner.
that we have agreements with, Madras Swim Team and
Yeah.
509J School District.
I think as long as it falls within the
The
hour.
approved hours?
Yeah, within the approved hours. Yes. And I would say, especially for folks who aren't, to be focusing on administrative tasks, that should be the priority, for their time. Whenever possible.
I think the only negative to that is, all this that we need to accomplish to bring us into the compliance. And rolling the heat, we could crank back the heat and save a lot of money for the 2.5 months that we're actually closed. Part of that period, we've got to be drained anyway. For cleaning,
There are, yeah,
yeah.
well. Swim team likes it a little cooler, don't they? Isn't that part of their?
We usually reduce the temperature by 3 degrees
Okay.
for swim meets.
Okay.
Never been. But next, yeah. Do they still swimming since then?
No, there's so there's 3 swim meets dates planned for 1 in June and 2 in July.
1 in June.
And part of this too is practice, daily practice.
Courtney, do you think that the hours as prescribed here could accommodate?
I would say if we were going to do this, we would want to be on the higher end of the hours that
But
are
that's-
listed in the
that's
scenario.
Not to exceed during that time span when we've got those people in pool.
Mhm.
So then there could be prior permission granted. Okay. Does that allow enough flexibility from a managerial perspective that allows staff to function?
I believe so, but I also would want to look at it a little bit more closely
So
with
there
those
would be
new
nothing
restrictions.
happening in August.
August, no, so August would be the 509J summer school swim lessons is the other,
Is it just 1 week in August?
it's 3.
Yeah, 3 weeks. So that gives you, is it 1 week in August of complete downtime and then just the normal
September to do our cleanings. Yeah, to do the deep cleaning stuff.
I like it because I think it goes with the mission of getting kids comfortable in the water and, you know, as possible with that program, you know, swimming skills. And I can tell you, I taught summer school for a year and those kids loved it. That was the highlight of the program for a bunch of those kids.
How many hours a day is swim team gonna be in?
An hour and a half.
An hour and a half? Because that depends on how.
So what I have in my analysis is an hour and a half.
An hour and a half.
And then the swim meets are an hour and a half, but we plan for 3 for setup and tear down and all that stuff.
Well, it's the hard sell to the rest of the community that we're gonna be open for those 2 specific contractual events and not for health and fitness and. Okay, somebody make a motion.
I so moved.
Or do you need more documentation for that?
So let me repeat what I have written down,
Okay.
and then you can tell me if that's what you move. So I have scenario 2, which includes reducing the executive director hours to not to exceed 30 hours unless prior approval received by the chair or vice chair. Recreation director retained through the summer hourly not to exceed 30 hours unless prior approval received by the executive director.
Courtney, do you need to note that those are gonna move from salary to hourly positions?
Yes, I've got that written down. I just didn't say it.
Okay.
All other positions, a full-time will be 30, part-time will be 20, not to exceed unless prior approval from the executive director. The budget will be revised to reflect these hours for the summer. And if it falls within approved hours, then partner organizations that we have agreements with can utilize the facility.
So you know. There was July 30th was tossed out at one point when we were discussing this.
I think. So we went. The directors all the way through the summer, so she.
Okay, September 30th.
I doubt that I doubt they'll be here that long.
Yeah.
Keep up through September 30th.
She said, what did you say? You doubt what?
I doubt we'll have that person that long.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Get everything out of her we can.
Yes.
So moved.
Oh, well, wait, there was no COLAs and no merits.
Correct. That's in the budget already.
So I make a motion that we adopt scenario 2 with the revisions.
Yeah.
As stated.
I second.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Frank, the second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Oh my gosh, where is my? Okay.
Okay, next up on our agenda, considering approval of policy 2025-01, MACRD cost recovery policy. We haven't talked enough numbers.
I make a motion that we accept. Policy number 2025-01 for the macro cost recovery policy.
Is there a second?
I second.
You already? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes
It's been a blur. I did do one. Hold on. It's at the end. Okay, so in your board packet, I do have an executive director report. What's going well, this is something that we put on the report in 2022, so we can be positive. Our staff members are amazing and have kept a really positive attitude, have brought joy over the last couple of weeks, and it's been hard. And everybody is ready to know what the next step is. So thank you, board, for making that decision tonight so we can share that with the team. Special project updates. We've talked about Hydro Apps. This is our new asset management, certifications and safety facility management software. I originally thought we were going to have to spend a lot of money on this. It's $1,500 a year. It's an online application. It's going to streamline a lot of things and give us a lot of trend data that will help us be more efficient and operate better. So we're really excited about that. The locker room revitalization project, I did a walkthrough with a local partner who has public sector construction experience. And there are concerns about the timeline and how quickly those walls are going to deteriorate. So his recommendation was to bring in the structural engineer, the architect, the people that need to tell us how much longer we have, and also give us a quote for an estimate of what they think that it might cost to fix it. His ballpark was 1.2 to 1.8 million for that project.
The walls in the restroom.
So it's the restrooms, it's the locker room hallway, and it's all the office doors that face walls that face the natatorium. So it's a pretty big project. What original construction was with drywall, and that's why this is happening. Lastly, I wanted to share with you, this is something that we have meant to do after every sports season, and we've never done it because we forget and move on to the next season. But this is a trend line of basketball, and we do a post-program survey with all the families and participants. And so this is just some data trending over time related to the number of participants, how many respond, not many respond to the survey. So like this year we had 221 participants and 25 responded to the survey. Their overall experience was a 4.5 out of 5. 88% said it met their expectations. 84% said it met their players' expectations. The thing we were really excited about was the communication. We started using Team Reach, which is an app that allows you to communicate, I think, very easily. And 96% of people said the communication was great. And that's the first time we've ever had that on a sports program. So we were really excited about that result. And that is my executive director report.
Any questions for Bort? All right, board member highlights.
I'll kick us off. My month did not go how I was hoping it would go. However, I got to spend time with some absolutely fantastic people, got to meet new folks, was incredibly impressed with the dedication and the passion of all of our volunteers on the PAC coming together. That was really fantastic to see. I got to speak with many community members who are supporters, community members who are not supporters. But I was able to have good conversations with them. Yeah.
Does it have to be full stop?
No.
Okay.
You do you, Irving.
Tell us about baseball.
Baseball is, my kids are better today than when I first met them.
Right.
Tonight, we took a beating because I wasn't there. I thought this was a priority, so I'm here, so we got another crack at them 2 more times, but the beating tonight. According to my wife. Had some good hits, but
What age group are you coaching?
juniors, which go from 12 to. Yeah. Yeah.
We appreciate you coming to that, Irving.
Yes. I thought it was important. Frank, nothing?
Not
Ted, nothing?
All right, then I will adjourn this meeting at 8:45. Thank you all for
Thank you guys online for coming.